This lecture is about Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is regarding the impact of government policies in a marketplace. Specifically, we're going to study three different policies. I'll put this up. Chapter 6 is called Supply, Demand, and Government Policies. We're going to study the impact of price ceilings, price floors, and taxes. Okay. The first one we're going to do is called price ceiling. Okay. A price ceiling is a legal maximum on the price at which a good can be sold. It's only effective, the market, if it's set below the market clear equilibrium price. Okay, so I'm going to use P max to denote price ceiling. And if the P max is greater than the equilibrium price, it's going to be a quote unquote a non-binding price ceiling. It has no impact on the marketplace. If it's below, if P max, the price ceiling is less than the equilibrium price, it's going to create a shortage. Okay, so let's see this. Okay, suppose we have a market here. Quantity of pizza, price of pizza. Say this is the pizza market in Southern California. Okay. Market for pizza in Southern California. We have a demand curve and a supply curve. Where they hit, we're in equilibrium, happy-go-lucky equilibrium A. P star for price of pizza, the market equilibrium price. I don't know, it's $5 a slice. Q star is the equilibrium quantity. That is equal to quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. That's the amount of pizza people want to buy. And that's equal to the amount of pizza companies want to sell. Let's say 100 slices of pizza are being bought and sold. Okay, so that is the market equilibrium with nothing, no interference or no government interference or anything. Everybody's happy-go-lucky. The government comes in, and the mayor of not the mayor, the governor of Southern California said, you know what? Pizza prices are so high. We want to make sure students can afford pizza and food. So we're going to set a price ceiling, P max, of say $8 a slice. Specifically, the government came in and said pizza cannot be sold for more than $8 a slice. This has no impact on the economy because right now this economy is buying and selling pizza at $5 a slice. They might as well set the price ceiling at $5 billion a slice. No one cares. It has no impact on the economy. So this again is an example of a non-binding price ceiling. Okay. Okay, now let's just try it again. So the government's like, oh my God, we screwed up. That's not what we meant. We're not going to do this. Okay. What we meant was a P max or price ceiling of 80 cents a slice, not $8 a slice, 80 cents a slice. Pizza cannot be sold, pizza cannot be bought at above 80 cents a slice. This has a real impact on the economy. Remember, pizza was being bought and sold for $5 a slice. 80 cents a slice is significantly lower than that. What that does is it causes some sellers to exit the market. Okay. And the quantity that is being sold is all the way down here at, say, 50 slices. Costs a lot of buyers to enter the market. Okay. Everybody and their grandmother wants to buy pizza. Quantity demanded is all the way here at, like, say, 200 slices. You have 200 slices being bought or wanted, not being bought. Only 50 slices are being sold. So here we have something called a shortage of 150 slices. Okay. Quantity demanded is 200. Quantity supplied is 50. The difference is when you difference that, you have 150. This is called a shortage. You have only 50 people that gets pizza, and the 150 other people who want pizza cannot get pizza. This is an example of a binding price ceiling. Okay. All right, so I gave you an example of non-binding price ceiling and an example of a binding price ceiling. Now let's go into the motives why a government want to do this. Okay. The main reason why government wants to do this, institute of pricing, is to keep prices low so poor can afford products and services. Classic example is rent control, and that's the one we're going to talk about. Second example, not really used much now, is reduce prices of basic inputs such as steel to curb inflation. If you make something like oil very cheap, it makes gasoline very cheap. It makes price of plastic very cheap. Plastic is made from many types of plastic is made from oil. Well, gasoline is used to transport vehicles here and there. I mean, transport stuff here and there. And plastic is used everywhere. It's a basic input product. It's used to make stuff from iPhones all the way to computers to cars. So if you make stuff like oil very cheap, it makes a lot of things very cheap, keeps inflation low. Okay. Third reason why you might want to have a price ceiling is to redirect resources for high priority use, such as aluminum and metal during wars or crises, right? So and this is kind of like the federal government cheating. The federal government wants a lot of tanks during World War II. Well, it only has a certain amount of money, right? It could go out and print money, but that leads to a host of issues. So that's you'll learn about in macroeconomics. So even the federal government only has a specific budget. So what does it do? It kind of cheats the system and say, hey, let's make aluminum price ceiling on aluminum, on metal. Instead of like $10 a pound, we'll make it 10 cents a pound. Hey, now I could buy 5 billion tanks. I just made the tank prices cheaper. Okay. Another reason is like during crises, like let's say, I own the Ralph's down the street. Right now I sell water for whatever, 10 cents a gallon, 25 cents a gallon. And overnight we had a massive earthquake. Blew up all the water tanks, blew up all the water pipes everywhere around the city. I go check my Ralph's, not touched. What am I going to do to the price of water? Instead of 10 cents a gallon, I'm going to make it $10,000 a gallon. And then the federal government comes here and says, hey, man, this is cool. Not cool. Okay, we're going to put a price ceiling on that. You could sell water at like maybe $100 a gallon, but $10,000 a gallon is not cool. Okay. All right, so these are various reasons why we have pricing, or why the government would institute a price ceiling. As we saw, given a price ceiling, we'll have shortages. Okay. So with shortages, we'll have rationing mechanisms. So let's go through some rationing mechanisms. Okay. Oh no. Okay. Rationing. It's a way to a way to get shortaged products to consumers, right? How do consumers get products that we have shortages in? There's different types of rationing. All right. Coupon rationing. Government issues coupons entitling the bearer to purchase X units of the commodity at P max. Okay. So you got this coupon and it says you could buy 2 slices of pizza at 80 cents a slice. Okay. Well, great. So how is the government going to distribute these coupons? Okay. Let's suppose we have a gasoline shortage. Who gets the gasoline coupons from the government? Pizza is kind of our, kind of a fun example, but let's talk about gasoline. We have a gasoline shortage. Does a Newport Beach mom who drives a Hummer to drive kids around in a Hummer or a large Mercedes SUV to soccer practice get the same number of coupons as, say, a truck driver who uses a truck for a living, or a doctor in a countryside that uses gas to visit patients all over the countryside, you know, all over the farmland. Do they get the same number of coupon as that Newport Beach mom? Well, what about I don't have a car. Let's suppose I don't have a car, or I drive a Tesla or an EV. Do I get the same number of coupon as someone who, as that truck driver or the doctor or the Newport Beach mom? Okay. A lot of questions are raised when the government decides to issue coupons. And what is quote unquote fair distribution of coupons? It gets really touchy and heated. Okay. And oh, by the way, if I drive an EV or I don't even have a car and I bicycle everywhere, I don't need these coupons. Okay. If I don't need these coupons, do I throw them away? Of course not. I could create a market for coupons. I know that Newport Beach mom needs these coupons. So I start eBaying it. I create a secondary market for coupons. Yeah, I could trade the coupons for peanut butter sandwiches or cash, right? We have the second market to buy and sell coupons. Another way, another rationing technique or dealing with shortages is called queuing. This is what we see everywhere. First come, first serve. Long line develops. Okay, everybody wants gasoline. We get a long line at the gas station. Okay. Well, this seems fair, right? You wake up early, you get in line. You're first in line, you get gas. It seems orderly, it seems fair. Who has advantage in this system? It's people with low opportune cost of time, usually the poor and the young. The CEO of Google doesn't have time to wait in line at a gas station to fill up his Porsche 911. Okay? He has many things he has to do during that day. Waiting in line is not one of them. So what does he do? He hires people to wait in line on his behalf. Okay. All right. Another way of rationing is called seller's preference. I got a bunch of pizza I want to sell. Government came in, and instead of being $5 a slice, the government came in and made pizza 80 cents a slice. Okay, then you all want my pizza? I sell it to whoever I want to sell it to. You all waiting in line, you are queuing in front of my pizza place, waiting in line to buy pizza, and Charlize Theron and Ben Roethlisberger walk by. Guess who's gonna get pizza? They are, not you. Okay. The seller sells only to favored customers. Well, guess what? Discrimination arises. Okay. And this can be illegal, right? If we discriminate based on color, wealth, sex, etc., well, that becomes illegal. Lastly, a black market develops. Okay. So everybody's trying to buy pizza at 80 cents a slice. That's a legal maximum. The government puts a max of 80 cents a slice on pizza, and some potential customer gets pissed because he can never, get slice of pizza. So what does he do? He goes to the back of the Pizza Hut, knocks on the door, and say, "Hey, man, I'll buy a slice of pizza from you for $1, $2." Okay? Well, that's illegal. Remember, the government says you can't sell pizza legally for a price higher than 80 cents. So if there's a transaction like this where someone says, "Hey, I'll buy a pizza for $1 or $2 a slice," and the seller sells it to them for above P max, that's an illegal transaction. Okay. But that can happen. Okay, so we talked about with shortages creates rationing. There's different types of rationing mechanisms out there. And by the way, black markets can develop. So now what we're going to do is talk about one example of rationing, and it's called rent control. Let's talk about rent control. Rent control. Local governments set ceilings on rent with the goal to help the poor by making housing more affordable. Well, that's what rent control is. Rent control is something. It's a price ceiling on rent. You can't have prices go up higher than X, or they can't go up by higher than, say, 10%. I think that's California's rent control right now. The critique: it's highly inefficient way to raise the standard of living of the poor. Many economists are against rent control because it's very inefficient. And we'll go into that right now. All right. Okay. Here's, let's say, for a market for apartments. Here's rent. Here's quantity of apartments. There's demand for apartments. And in the book, it's a vertical line. It's okay. I can make it like this. Doesn't matter. Could be vertical. It doesn't have to be. It's happy-go-lucky equilibrium A. Rent star. Say it's like $2,000 a month. Q star, quantity apartment and whatever in a particular city in Southern California. Let's say there's 1,000 of them, 1,000 whatever, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartments, and they're about $2,000 a month. Okay. If the government came in and puts in a rent control, and let's say P max, and they say it's $1,000 a month. Okay. The shortage in the short run, so I'm going to draw short run first. This is short run, is going to be smaller than the shortage in the long run. Okay. This is the quantity demanded given rent control. Let's say it's like 1,000 here, so it's like 1,500. And let's say this is quantity supply, and this is 1,000, so half of that, like 500. So we have a shortage equal to 1,000 apartments. Okay. And in the short run, we have a certain picture. And now let's draw the long run. Okay. Quantity of apartment, rent. Rent star, which is 2,000. Okay. Demand. Supply. This is happy-go-lucky equilibrium. This is the market for apartment. This is long run. Okay. Different color. And this is P max, which is equal to 1,000. And so I forgot to say happy-go-lucky equilibrium here. Q star is equal to 1,000 apartments. And in the long run, we have quantity supplied and quantity demanded. And this is 1,000. Okay. So this is like went up higher. I don't know, it's like 2,000. And this is I don't know, 200. So let's say that is 1,800 shortage. Okay. In the short run, demand and supply are both inelastic. That's actually something we learned in chapter 5. Both demand and supply are inelastic. Given that they're steeper sloped, and even in the book, they had supply being perfectly inelastic. You're going to have very little shortage relative to the long run, okay? Because consumers and producers are less responsive to this price change of the government that the government implemented. We were in happy-go-lucky market equilibrium of $2,000 per month rent on apartment, and the federal government, I mean not the whatever the state or local government came in and said you can't rent apartments for more than $1,000 a month, and we could see the shortage is between here and here. In the long run, both supply and demand are more elastic. You could see that that is shown by flatter demand curve and flatter supply curve. And what that causes is a wider gap between quantity demanded, what consumers want, and quantity supplied, what suppliers will give. And the shortage becomes wider. Okay. So why is demand and supply so inelastic in the short run and more elastic in the long run? Let's go through the reasons why. Okay. For consumers, mainly they're inflexible, or they would love to take advantage of the new lowered rent. You know, instead of $2,000 a month, it's $1,000 a month because of rent control. But they may already be in leases with their buddies. You know, they faced a $2,000 a month before, and they're like, oh yeah, you know, let's share an apartment with my friend. And you're stuck in a lease for the remainder of the year or 2 year, and the government passed this law. You can't just break that lease. You're kind of stuck there for the remainder of that lease. You would love to take advantage of it, but you're stuck. Or you're living in another city. You know, maybe you just, you know, it was you wanted to go to UC Irvine or something, but the rent was so high and you're like, I can't afford $2,000 a month. So if you chose to go to UC Davis or something like that, UC Merced, and then you heard about this law change, you're like, oh wow, now I want to switch back and go to UC Irvine. Well, that transfer doesn't happen instantaneously. You got to apply, you got to get accepted, and you can't transfer until the next quarter or the next year. So it takes time for some of these decisions, even though the consumers want to take advantage of it, because of various decisions that were already made and they're beholden to them, they cannot take advantage of the new lower prices. Not all of them. Okay. Some can, but not everybody. Well, what about producers or the apartment owners? They don't know. It's a lot of uncertainty there. If you got an apartment complex, you realize the government passed this law, so now instead of charging $2,000 a month, you could only charge $1,000 a month. Well, there's a lot of uncertainty there. Should I convert it to condos and start selling them? Should I blow them up and make parking lots, or blow them up and make a strip mall? Well, that's a very expensive decision that takes multi-million dollars. If you're the one who screwed up and made that decision rashly, and the very next month or very next day or very next year, the rent control disappeared, yeah, you're screwed. You're fired from your company. So it takes time for the apartment owners to really think about and be careful in making one of these multi-million-dollar decisions. In the long run, these people, you know, consumers, they don't have the inflexibility problem. Their leases all ended, you know, they've got into the school of their choice again, and they could take advantage of the rent control, and they all do. Producers, in the long run, they know that they've already all made their decisions. And because all of them are more flexible, both consumers and producers or apartment owners are more flexible and more responsive to the price changes, both the supply curve and the demand curve are flatter, which causes the shortage to increase in the long run. All right. Let's go look at some rationing mechanisms that occurred with rent control. Okay. You got long wait lists that happened in real life. You have preferences for tenants without children or animals, right? If I could charge $2,000 a month, that's one thing. If I could only charge $1,000 a month, I'm going to try to minimize my costs. I don't want tenants who have children or animals that could ruin my apartment and cost more for me to fix it up. Discrimination based on race, religion, that happens. Bribes to superintendents or basically apartment managers. Think about it this way. If instead of paying $2,000 a month, I could only pay $1,000 a month, that's a savings of $12,000 a year. You're on a long wait list to get an apartment. What do? Maybe you slip a couple $1,000s to the building manager to get you ahead of the line. Okay, these are illegal, but it happens. Charge for furniture. Again, I'm an apartment owner. I used to be getting $2,000 a month. Now I could only get $1,000 a month. What do I do as an apartment owner? I have creative ways to charging money to get that extra $1,000 that I lost. I charge for doors. This place comes with a door, comes with a heater. The heater costs another $600 a month. That bathroom door costs another $50 a month. That other bathroom door costs another $100 a month. You're trying to make up the key. Oh, you need a key for the apartment? That's another $300 a month. You're trying to make up the $1,000 that you lost. The government made you lose. Okay. Other effects, something I kind of touched on. If I could only charge $1,000 a month instead of $2,000 a month, apartment owners are going to provide in a competitive environment. Apartment owners are only going to provide an apartment that's worth $1,000 a month. The apartment quality falls. Not only does the amount that the apartments are being rented fall, because with the in the short run and especially in the long run, the shortage increases. Part of the reason that the shortage increased is the amount of apartments being leased fell. Remember, the apartment owners fell dramatically. Not only did the number of apartments being leased fall, but the quality falls as well with rent control. And the government has to hire a whole new department to monitor and prevent discrimination, for tenants without children, discrimination based on race, bribery, illegally charging for furniture, stuff like this. Now they got to hire all these people's employees to monitor the situation. Okay, so is this a good policy? Most economists think that there's a better policy. Specifically, the reason why economists, a lot of these economists are concerned with these policies of rent control, and these issues occur is because what we want to do is the rent consumers, demanders, we want that to fall. But that correspondingly makes the rent for suppliers, the apartment owners, that the rent that they collect to fall. If we make this fall by $1,000, the rent that's collected by landlords fall by $1,000. And because we negatively impact the suppliers, we get less apartments. That causes long wait lists. Obviously, the demand increases as well, quantity demanded. We get this issue, we get this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue, and we get these issues here. Okay, we have quality falling, discrimination, etc., etc. There's an alternative policy out there that reduces the rent for demanders. Yeah. Oh my God, I can't even explain. But rent for the supplier stays the same. And that's called Section 8, or rent subsidy program. For Section 8, or rent subsidy, you got the rent for demanders plus subsidy equal rent for supplier. So what happens is the apartment owner still gets $2,000 a month. We still let the consumer only pay 1,000, and the government pays the other 1,000. The consumer is happy because the poor, the person that the federal government or the state government is trying to help, the government is trying to help, they're happy because they're paying $1,000, just like in rent control situation. Same thing. The apartment owner is happy because they're collecting $2,000, just like under a free market system. They're happy. The difference here is made up by the subsidy that the federal government provides to the consumer. This goes directly to the landlord as a check. Okay, so this, of course, there's inefficiencies everywhere, but this is a more efficient system because we do not provide a disincentive to the apartment owners to reduce the number of apartments to rent, to have preferences for tenants without children in an apartment, to discriminate, okay, to charge for keys and furniture and stuff like that. They're in a very competitive environment still. They're earning a competitive market rent, a market competitive rent, and the consumer is made better off because they're paying less. Okay, so this is an alternative policy that is more efficient. Let's clear this, and let's go into price floors. So what is a price floor? A price floor is opposite day of a price ceiling. It's a legal minimum on the price at which a good can be sold. Only affects the market if it's set above the market clearing price. If P min, or price floor, is less than equal to P star, or I put PEQ here, the price floor is non-binding, has no effect on the market. If P min is greater than P star, or equilibrium price, the price floor is binding. It impacts, what it means by being binding is it impacts the marketplace. It creates a surplus. So what I'm going to do is explain price floor using minimum wage laws. So let me draw two marketplaces. Okay. So here's one market. Here's another market. And we'll call this low skill worker market. And this is like high skill worker market. We'll make it extreme and call this like NBA players. Okay. The market for NBA players. And this is the wage rate, W for wages, wages. And this is labor, the amount of workers that company needs. And the low skill market looks like this. Demand for wages, or laborers, and supply for laborers. Okay. We'll use L star. So I don't know, Walmart needs like 10 workers and they're paying like say $10. W star $10 is equilibrium is A. For NBA players, they make a little bit more money. There's demand. There's supply. Point A is equilibrium. Okay. L star, you need 10 NBA players per team. Okay. Lakers need 10. Wages that they make, I don't know, they make like $100,000 an hour, whatever. I have no idea. Okay. So you have a low skill worker market and a high skill worker market. Okay. Government comes in and puts in a minimum wage rate law right here. Okay. This is called P-min. And the P-min here is, let's say, $20 an hour. Okay. Here, basically in the low skill market, workers were getting paid $10 each, and 10 employees or 10 people were being hired by this company. Now the government came in and said, no, you can't pay them $10 each. You got to pay them $20 each. Well, more people, labor supply goes up. More people want to work. Okay. So let's say about 15 people want to get jobs. But the company now doesn't want to hire 10 people. They only want to hire 5 people. So the difference here is a surplus of workers, or what we call unemployment. And that's right now of 10 workers. 10 people who want to get jobs, okay, don't get jobs. Okay. Only 5 people get jobs. Well, this is an example of a binding, okay, price floor. It distorts the marketplace. More people want to go into work. The company wants to hire less people, and the market is distorted, and we get 10 people who are unemployed. Now let's look at NBA players. They're making $100,000 an hour. The minimum wage rate comes in at $20 an hour. Is that going to affect NBA players? No, it's not. It's not going to affect them at all. You know, LeBron James isn't looking at the minimum wage rate when he is negotiating a contract with the Lakers. Okay. So this is an example of a non-binding price floor. It has no impact in the high skill labor market. It only has the impact in the low skill labor market. Okay. All right, let's move away from here and continue to talk about more about price floors, the minimum wage rate. Okay. Well, the minimum wage rate was first instituted using by the federal government, the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. It ensured workers a minimum adequate standard of living. The federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. And some states, they don't even have minimum wage rates. In those states, the federal or the states that the minimum wage is below the federal minimum wage, then the federal minimum wage is binding. In California, our minimum wage is like $20 an hour. In our state, the federal minimum wage is lower than California's, so the California's minimum wage is binding. Basically, the minimum wage that affects you is the highest of the federal, state, local minimum wage rate. Okay. All right. We saw that for workers in low skill markets, the minimum wage rate is binding. In high skill markets, like the, NBA players, the lawyer markets, or the doctor markets, it's not binding at all. Okay. We have something here. We have an insider-outsider issue. When we have binding minimum wage, Those who can get the job, in my example, it was like 5 people who get the job, they have more money. They're happy. They get more money. But you have outsiders, those who cannot get the job. They have no income because they can't find a job. Okay. And let me clear all this. The least skilled and the least experienced, such as teenagers, are the hardest hit. Teenagers are more than willing to accept lower wages than no wages at all. What teenagers like you guys, you'd rather get a job for a few bucks an hour than be unemployed. You want to build your resume. You need on-the-job training. And it's harder for you guys to get it. Okay. Well, you have secondary issues and long-term issues associated with minimum wage rates. Okay. It encourages teenagers to drop out of school. If you make 10 bucks an hour, yeah, maybe I'll deal with algebra and go to college. Make 20 bucks, $25 an hour, yeah, maybe not. Maybe I'll just drop out of school. What do I need algebra for when I can make 20 bucks an hour, 25 bucks an hour? It encourages firms to switch to machinery. Why do I need to hire 3 sweepers at 20 bucks an hour? I was more than happy to hire 1 sweep or 3 sweepers at 10 bucks an hour. But 3? No, I'm just going to buy a Roomba and let it roll around in the factory. And labor unions love it. Semi-skilled and skilled workers, they have labor unions. They love the minimum wage rate law. Okay. If Johnny over there sweeping the floor, he was getting 10 bucks an hour, and Ford, you could pay him 20 bucks an hour now. And the guys who are building the cars, we're getting paid, whatever, $50 an hour. And Johnny makes 20 now. Hey, you know what? You guys better pay us 70 bucks an hour. They use the minimum wage law as a bargaining tool against management. Okay. So let's look at minimum wage law. Okay. Is this a good policy? Well, we have the same issue as price ceilings. Okay, price floors, price ceilings, we have the same issue. We have the wage for the worker and wage that the firms pay. We want to increase this, but that causes this side to increase as well. We want to increase the wage for the workers, but the firms now have to pay more. So if the firm has to pay more, they want to hire less workers. They want to ship jobs out to other countries. They want to, use machines instead of people. So what we have to do is figure out a policy to increase the wage for workers, but it does not impact the wage paid by firms. An alternative is called earned income tax credit, earned income tax credit, or EITC. What EITC does, it reduces the tax, and I think there's also a negative tax portion for low income workers. So you get actually money back. I believe that's true. But you pay significantly low taxes, okay, if you don't make too much money. Okay, so it increases the wages of the worker. But the firms, they don't have to pay for this. It's the IRS or the federal government giving this benefit to the worker. So EITC, or wage subsidy, is an alternative policy that might be better than minimum wage laws. All right, let's clear this. And let's go to our third topic in this section, And this is called taxes. Let's go through taxes. Okay, taxes. What we are going to do is focus on sales tax. Okay, we just generally study, market for pizza, right? So we're going to talk about tax on pizza, basically. There's tax is T. I'm going to use T for tax. T for tax. And there's two different types of taxes. There's specific tax and ad valorem tax. T could be in dollars, that's specific tax. Okay, and that's added, T dollars is added to the unit, added to the price of the good. And you could think of this as like a CRV. I know CRV is not a tax, but you could think about a CRV. You're in California, I think, whatever, 5 cents or 10 cents is added to the price of a can of Coke. Doesn't matter if you bought the can of Coke at 50 cents a can from Costco, you still have to pay whatever, 10 cents more, 60 cents a can. Or if you went to a Rams game and you bought a can of Coke for $70 each, you still have to pay $70.10 more. I mean, 10 cents more. So you have to pay $70.10. Okay. So a specific tax is T dollars is added to the price. Ad valorem tax is what you and I are mostly used to when we go to buy stuff at a store. T% of the value of the good is added to the unit, to the price. So what do I mean by that? So when you go to Macy's and you buy a T-shirt for $10, you gotta go when you go to the cash register to pay, you pay $11 because they said, oh, there's a sales tax of 10%. Okay, that's ad valorem tax. You had to pay 10% of the value of that good. It was $10, so you had to pay 10% extra for the T-shirt. Okay, we're going to use specific tax. They're the same. It's pretty much the same thing. The analysis is pretty much it's a bit more complicated for ad valorem tax, so we're going to stick with specific tax. Okay, that's going to be our focus. Why do government impose taxes? To raise revenue for public projects. Okay, all right. So let me clear this and give you some additional definitions. We have something called legal incidence or initial incidence of tax. And we have something called final incidence or burden of the tax. Legal incidence or initial incidence of tax is on the individual who collects and forwards the tax receipt to the government. Who is actually legally responsible for collecting the tax and paying the tax? Usually the seller of the good, right? We go to Macy's, we buy a T-shirt or tube socks. They are the ones who have to collect the tax and send it off to Sacramento or whatever. And then you have the final incident or the burden of the tax. Okay. It's usually on the individual who actually ends up. So this burden of the tax is the individual who ends up paying for the tax. Legally, the government can say the tax is on the seller, but the final burden may be on the buyer because the seller could just increase the price, right? It's usually divided in some proportion between buyers and seller. And you're going to find out it's based on responsiveness or elasticities. What I'm going to do is go through quote unquote scenario 1 and quote unquote scenario 2 and show you in scenario 1, I'm going to put the legal incidence on the seller. And in scenario 2, I'm going to put the legal incidence on the buyer. And what I'm going to do is show you that in the same marketplace, doesn't matter who has the legal incidence. Okay? The legal incidence doesn't matter. Who end up actually paying for the tax, it's not a function of legal incidence. It's a function of what we're going to learn soon enough. Oh, it's elasticity. All right, so let's do this. Scenario 1 first. Okay. So here, the legal incidence or initial incidence is on the seller. Okay. So what does that look like? You know what? Maybe I could just cut it in half like this. Oh yeah, it's actually better. So you have quantity of pizza. This is the pizza market. We have price of pizza. Here's demand for pizza. Here's supply for pizza. It's happy-go-lucky equilibrium A. Here's P star. Here's Q star. So this is the price of pizza and quantity supplied and demanded of pizza without any taxes. The government came in and said, there's a tax of T put on the price of pizza. And let's say that's $1, okay? And to make this concrete, we'll say this is $3 a slice, and 100 slices are being bought and sold. So $1. So if this is 3, $1 is a vertical height that's 1/3 of this distance. It's about like this big. What sellers are going to do, because they've been hit with the tax, okay, is what they're going to do is the following. They're going to say, okay, you know, I was all happy selling you guys pizza at $3 a slice, and I'm more than happy to sell 100 slices of pizza to you all consumers. Yeah, but now the government came in and they're taxing me $1 a slice. Legal incident or initial incidence is on the seller. So now when I collect $3 from all you consumers, I got to go home and I got to pay $1 for each slice, and I got to send it to Sacramento. That's not cool. I'll still make 100 slices of pizza and sell it to y'all consumers, but I got to make $4 a slice now. Okay. I got to charge $1 more per slice. Sellers basically said, I don't care how many slices of pizza I'm making, I'm going to charge $1 more per slice. Specifically, they are going to increase, shift upwards or back. So not increase, but they're going to decrease supply, okay, or shift up vertically by $1, okay, up here. So this is $4. Okay, that's what they want. That's what they do. Well, consumers, they see this, they're like, yeah, yeah, it's all cool and all, and I know you want me to charge, you want to charge me $4 a slice, and you think I'm going to still buy 100 slices of pizza? No. There's other things I could buy, like hamburgers. So I'm going to buy less pizza, and we're going to get to a new equilibrium B. Okay, this is the price the consumers pay, somewhere between 3 and 4. Let's make it simple and stupid and say $3.50. If consumers pay $3.50, Producers, they only take home PS or $2.50 because the dollar in between is tax. They have to give it to the government, okay? So PD is what consumers pay, okay? $3.50. PS is equal to $2.50. Why? Because producers, they collect $3.50 and they have to send $1 per slice to the government, okay? So we have PD is equal to PS plus T. You could also see the amount being bought and sold falls from Q star to QT. Let's say, I don't know, 75 slices are now being bought and sold, okay? All right. Here, we could see how much of the tax is paid by the consumer and how much of the tax is paid by the consumer as well as the seller. Before there was a tax, consumers were paying $3 a slice. Now they're paying $3.50 a slice. This difference here, right here, is 50 cents. That's the amount of tax paid by the consumers. Okay, we could do the same analysis for the producers. Producers, before, they were selling pizza and earning $3 a slice. Now they earn $2.50 a slice. So this vertical distance right here of 50 cents, that is the amount of tax paid by the seller. Okay, so let's see, the tax that the consumers pay, QD, plus tax that the sellers pay, QS, has to equal to the total tax, right, of $1. The tax that consumers pay, that is equal to PD minus P star. That's how you figure out how much of the tax the consumer pay per slice of pizza. Tax that the sellers pay per slice of pizza is P star minus PS. How much did they receive before? How much are they receiving now after tax? Let's see what else we have to figure out. Tax for consumers, tax for producers, the full tax, the amount being reduced. So the amount being bought and sold is reduced. So this is basically what happens, okay, once you implement a tax. Now let's do scenario 2. Legal incidence or initial incidence on buyer. Buller, buyer. Buyers. Okay. So now consumers are legally responsible for paying for the tax. So let's draw the pizza market again. Pizza. Price for pizza. Pizza market. Demand for pizza. Supply for pizza. Happy-go-lucky equilibrium A. Q's P star, which is I think $3 a slice. Yep. Q star, which is, I don't know, 100 slices being bought and sold. So this is the happy-go-lucky equilibrium for pizza without taxes. And the government came in and they instituted a tax of $1 on the buyers of pizza. So consumers now, if they pay $3 for a slice, they have to go home and pay another $1 to the government. So they end up paying $4 a slice. So consumers look at this and they, this is the logic, intuition, the story I'm telling of how this works. They look at this, they're like, man, I'm more than happy to spend $3 a slice and buy 100 slices of pizza. But sellers, you guys gotta give us a discount. Because now I gotta pay this thing called a tax of $1 per slice. So I end up paying $4 a slice of pizza. Okay. What you need to do is if you want me to buy 100 slices of pizza, you got to lower the price of pizza by $1 per slice. Shoot, if you want me to buy any amount of pizza, you got to lower the price of pizza by $1 a slice. Okay. So what happens is the demand curve decreases, or shifts downward by exactly tax of $1. So instead of 3, this is 2 here. Okay. The sellers, they look at this and they're like, yeah, that's all cool and all. But you know what? We're gonna sell less pizza. And instead of charging you $2 a slice like you want, I'm gonna charge you $2.50 a slice. Okay. QT is equal to, and we're only gonna buy and sell 75 slices of pizza. Okay, so if the sellers charge consumers $2.50, the consumers, they go home and they have to pay $1 per slice to the government. They end up paying PD of $3.50. Okay. This difference here is tax, right? That's what I just said. PD is equal to PS plus tax, just like this picture. Okay. And we could figure out the amount of tax paid, which is, this is $1, paid by the consumer and the amount of tax paid by the producer and the consumer. Tax is equal to PD plus PS. Tax is equal to TD plus TS. TD, or the amount of tax paid by the consumer, is equal to, well, let's see. They used to pay $3 a slice. Now they actually pay $3.50 a slice, right? Because they have to pay the producer $2.50 and then $1 more for tax. So they're now paying $3.50 a slice. So the amount of tax that the consumers pay is this vertical distance right here, which is 50 cents. Okay, this is 50 cents, and that is equal to PD minus P star. All right, the tax that the sellers pay is again 50 cents. They used to receive $3 for a slice of pizza, and now they only receive $2.50 for a slice of pizza. So this vertical distance here, 50 cents, is the amount of tax that is paid by the seller. It is P star minus PS. Okay. I think everything, the amount of the amount being bought and sold, QT, this is a T. Okay, maybe I should redo that one. Is the same, 75 cents, 75 slices of pizza, 75 slices of pizza here. And so, yeah, you could see that the amount being bought and sold falls. Same thing here. The amount paid by the buyer goes up in both situations. The amount actually received by the seller goes down in both situations. They used to receive $3 a slice, now they receive $2.50 a slice. Consumers used to pay $3 a slice, now they pay more, $3.50 a slice. There's a wedge in between the amount being paid by the buyers and the amount received by the sellers, and that's the tax. We showed that. You could see in both pictures are fairly identical. Okay. Specifically, the tax levied the tax levied on sellers and the tax levied on the buyers. What that means is the seller having initial incidence and the buyer having initial incidence have equivalent effect in the same market for the same good. The only difference is that when in scenario one, when the tax is on the seller, the supply curve shifted up by $1. In scenario two, when the initial incidence is on the buyer, the demand curve shifted down by $1. Okay. But the analysis led to the same result. So what I'm going to do from now on is we're going to simplify the picture a bit, and we're not going to show whether it shifted up by $1, the supply curve, or the demand curve shifted down by $1. What I'm going to show is the following, unless that shift is required for some analysis. Most of the time it's not, but unless it's asked for, we're not going to show it anymore to make the picture simpler. Okay, so this is how I'm going to draw it now. Here's quantity of pizza, price of pizza, demand, supply. Here's happy-go equilibrium A, happy-go-lucky equilibrium A, P star, Q star. And what we're going to do, here's QT, price that the suppliers pay, price that the consumers pay. PS is the price that the suppliers receive. The difference is tax. This is all we're going to show. This difference right here for completeness, that is tax that the consumers pay. This vertical distance right here is the tax that the suppliers pay. The total is the total tax per unit. This QT is the amount being bought and sold given tax. And what I'm not going to do is show how the supply curve shifted there or how the demand curve shifted there. We're not going to show that anymore. Okay? We're going to draw it like this. Okay. All right. So here I drew a couple of examples of tax being implemented in a marketplace, and I just showed how in my simple numerical example, both consumers and producers paid 50% of the tax. Remember, there was a tax of $1. Consumers paid 50 cents, producers paid 50 cents. They paid equal amounts of the tax. And that's not always true. Okay, I alluded to this earlier. Elasticity, price elasticity in demand, and price elasticity of supply, and the ultimate bearer of tax. Okay. The more elusive or responsive to price changes, the more elastic you are, the more of the tax you can avoid. Okay, so let's get into I'll give you a couple of examples of this. Let's do one. Very elastic supply and relatively inelastic demand. Okay. There's quantity, I don't know, gasoline in Southern California, price of gasoline in Southern California. This is the gas market in Southern California and we said very elastic supply, so very flat supply curve, and very inelastic demand. So it's a very steeply, maybe that's kind of too steep, too flat, but whatever. Yeah, demand. This is happy-go-lucky equilibrium A. Here's quantity of gas being bought and sold. Here's the price of gas. And let's say there's some tax. Okay, it doesn't matter if supply curve goes up or demand curve falls. We know the wedge is this vertical distance. And this is price that the consumers pay. This is price that the suppliers receive. And the difference here is tax. QT is the amount being bought and sold after tax is implemented. And we could see here, TD, the amount of tax that the sellers pay, very large. TS is very small. It looks like about 90% of the tax is paid by the consumer and only about 10-20% is paid by the seller. Okay, it's because sellers are very responsive or elastic, as shown by a flat supply curve, and consumers are very inelastic, as shown by this steeper demand curve. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do opposite day. Relatively inelastic supply and very elastic demand. Okay, this is opposite day. Let's show this. It's quantity, there's price. Inelastic supply is very steeply sloped supply curve. Elastic demand is a flat slope demand curve. We got happy-go-lucky equilibrium here. We have P star, Q star, and we're going to draw tax, QT. This is the price the suppliers receive. This is the price that the consumers pay, and this vertical distance is the tax amount. Okay. This is the amount of tax paid by the consumers, TD, and this is the tax amount paid by the sellers, TS. And you could see the amount of tax paid by the sellers is huge relative to the amount of tax paid by the consumers. It's flipped now compared to the gasoline scenario. Here, we have about 90% of the tax being paid by the consumers. Here, about 90 or 80% of the tax is paid by the seller. It's because sellers are now very unresponsive to price changes. Consumers are very responsive to price changes. That's flat supply curve, demand curve, steeply sloped supply curve. Inelastic supply, elastic demand. Here, elastic supply, inelastic demand. All right, let's move on. Let's clear this. The tax burden falls more heavily on the side of the market that is less elastic. determined by the forces of supply and demand. Okay. Lawmakers can decide whether a tax comes from the buyer's pocketbook or from the seller's, nevertheless cannot legislate the true burden of the tax. The true burden of the tax, who actually pays for the tax, is based on supply and demand. Who really wants it? Cigarettes, gasoline. Consumers really need gasoline. Consumers are addicted to cigarettes, so they really need cigarettes. So when the government says, "Oh my God, we're going to try to make companies, gasoline companies like Exxon and Mobil go out of business, and we're going to charge them more taxes." Well, guess what Exxon and Mobil does? They just increase the price of gasoline because they know you and I in Southern California, we need our cars. Most of us do not drive EVs. Cigarettes is the same thing. We're going to try to drive Philip Morris and RJ Reynolds out of business because they're killing our people. Okay, so we're going to make the price of cigarettes $2 more per pack. That actually happened in California about 5-6 years ago. Government passed a law to increase the price of cigarettes by $2 more a pack. We're going to drive them out of business. You know what Philip Morris and RJ Reynolds did? Increase the price of cigarettes by $2. And basically most consumers of cigarettes basically pay the $2 more now. Okay, instantaneously when that law went into effect, I think the price of cigarettes went from like $6 a pack to $8 a pack. Right when the law went into effect. All right, there's a couple of book case studies. We're going to talk about one. I thought this one was kind of cool. Okay? And this was a really interesting one. Luxury tax of the 1990s. In 1990, a new luxury tax was created. It was to tax the super wealthy. Okay, it was a tax on yachts and private airplanes and furs and Ferraris and jewelry. The goal was to raise revenue from those who could most afford to pay for it. Okay? But the thing is sellers of luxury items are more inelastic, are inflexible, okay, compared to buyers. Buyers of luxury markets are very elastic. Okay? And so the sellers were paying these taxes. It was the guy, Joe Schmo yacht. Okay, he's probably pretty rich. But the guy who builds yachts out in Newport Beach, California, or Florida, the guy who's building these airplanes, and the people who are making fur coats and jewelry, they're the ones who are paying the taxes, not the Jeff Bezos of the world. Okay, think about it this way. I'm Jeff Bezos. I could buy a luxury yacht for $100 million at Newport Beach, California, or I could buy it at Monaco, France for $100 million. Same yacht. And but federal government passed a new law, and I don't know how much the tax was. Let's make it simple and stupid and say 10%. So if I buy it in Newport Beach, California, Jeff Bezos now has to pay $10 million more for that yacht, for a $100 million yacht. Does Jeff Bezos pay $110 million and buy a yacht in Newport Beach, California? Or, you know what? Maybe he'll still spend $110 million, but he'll buy a $100 million yacht in Monaco and spend $10 million on a condo in Monaco. What is better, paying $10 million to Uncle Sam or $10 million to buy yourself a house or a super Ferrari or something? Let's say fur coats, $50,000 for a fur coat. Do I go to Beverly Hills and pay $55,000 for a fur coat? Or do I fly out my wife, mistress, or whoever to France for that extra $5,000 and pay $50,000 for a fur coat and $5,000 for a vacation in France? And that's what rich people were doing. They were just buying these products from other countries. And the sellers in Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, Newport Beach, and New York, they had to reduce the prices. They had to eat the taxes. So basically 3 years later, which is pretty quick for the federal government, the luxury tax was repealed. Okay, this is the end of our lecture on this chapter. We'll stop the recording now. Good day.